We're going to go live now. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, members of the public who joined us and who's watching, and our officers present at this meeting. This is our first council meeting of 2021. I would like to wish you a very happy new year and a healthy new year as well. If I could start the meeting asking Archdeacon Peter Leonard to lead us into prayers, please. Peter, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. As always, it's a real privilege to be asked to pray at the beginning of this meeting, and I hope my prayers are helpful to you. If you profess another faith other than the Christian one, then I hope that you're able to use my words to pray in a way which is appropriate for you. And if you don't profess a faith, then I hope that my words might be a source of reflection. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for our island. And we pray for the community who live, work and worship upon it. We thank you for all who are prepared to take up the responsibility of serving on local government, especially during challenging times in our world and our country. We pray for them now, asking for the gift of your Holy Spirit and for wisdom and guidance. We pray also this evening for all those who work on our island in healthcare, all those who are on the front line of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, for those who work in the hospital, in the hospice, in our care homes, in GP surgeries, in pharmacies, for paramedics, for all in social care. Lord, give them your strength, your comfort, and your peace. We pray for this meeting this evening, for all discussions and debates which will take place, and for all votes that will happen. We pray, Lord, that you would give these councillors confidence and courage, wisdom and skill, that they might use their gifts carefully for the benefit of all. We pray for a spirit of cooperation, a spirit of peace, and a desire to serve the common good which is transferred from ideas and talk to clear action. May the abiding atmosphere of this meeting be one of unity, service and achievement. God our Father, you guide everything in wisdom and love. Accept these prayers which we offer for our island and for this meeting. In your goodness, watch over those in authority, so that people everywhere may enjoy freedom, security and peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for those kind words. We can proceed on to the next item, which is apologies. I've not received any apologies. I don't know if we received any late ones. No, it doesn't appear so. Can I just ask members again to have their cameras off unless you are speaking, and have it on mute unless you are speaking, and please speak only when you are asked to speak, or indicate by the chat bar only if you do wish to speak. Thank you very much. We need to keep the system clear, otherwise we will not be able to continue with the meeting. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. That's the council meeting held on the 18th of November 2020. I approve the minutes, and could I ask for a seconder, please?
Seconded, Chris Quirk.
Chris Quirk. Thank you, Councillor Quirk. The minutes has been proposed. Seconded. I will take a minute just to sign the minutes, please. Ask for your patience.
Chair, while you're doing so, I did have an apology from Councillor Abraham, I should have mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Abraham. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. The minutes are signed. And item number 2 on your agenda is declarations of interest. Does any councillor have any interest to declare? Councillor Michael Lilley, you have 2 declarations.
Yes, Chair. One is under the item on pay policy. I have a family member who is, my wife, who's an employee of the Isle of Wight Council, so I will not vote or take part in that item. My second declaration is that I am the chair of the Isle of Wight Voluntary Sector Forum, and I declare that in relation to my motion, which is on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilley. Are there any other interest to declare by any councillor?
Chair,
Chairman. Chairman,
my wife is employed by a school which may indirectly be linked to the Isle of Wight Council pay policy, although I don't see it stops me voting.
Councillor Chapman.
Chairman, just to say that I've managed to get back into the meeting again.
Thank you.
Yes, there's a problem with the system apparently.
Right. If you could have your camera off.
I'm just going to turn it off now, Chairman. Thank you.
For joining us. Thank you very much. Item number 3 on your agenda is public questions. We have 3 questions submitted. The first one was submitted by Mr. Michael Wilkes, and he's asked the question, given the importance of walking and cycling for island residents' health and well-being during the pandemic and the Council's commitment to addressing the climate crisis, what steps will the Isle of Wight Council take to ensure that it and island government's local transport notes 120 and gear the changed guidelines by the government to promote walking and cycling? And the leader, I'll ask leader to respond on this one.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, I think Councillor Ian Ward will be able to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairman. The answer, the Council supports the government policy gear change and the aspirations for cycling and walking set out in the document. The Council acknowledges the benefits of walking and cycling and aspires to utilise this document and its design principles to draw down relevant funding as and when funding becomes available and to support the climate change agenda. We are currently developing plans to enhance cycling and walking routes using allocated government funding, and we are actually out to consultation at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. That's appreciated, and of course we're all aware of the funding the council received to make those improvements and to provide that. The second question is from Mr. Coulant, submitted, and the question is following. Following the reply to my question PQ 49/19 to the leader of the Isle of Wight Council about Dinosaur Isle procurement process, please can you explain how many prospective partners remain involved and the latest status of the council's dialogue with them? And
I'll take that, Chair.
Yep.
I'll just make sure I'm on the camera. Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for it to click over. There we are. So following the publication of the invitation to tender, known as the ITT, the Council has been in dialogue as part of its procurement process. This is currently with potential consortia, and it is hoped that the dialogue will shortly lead to a timetable being agreed for its conclusion. Thank you, Chair.
thank you, Councillor Stewart. And that will go to Mr. Coulthard. The next question is from Mr. Bob Blizzard. His question is as follows. Given the current situation with the pandemic, which is forecast to get worse before it gets better, would you agree to send out postal vote application forms with council tax demands in order to encourage members of the public to engage with the public process by voting by post rather than in person in order to protect the public and the returning officers' staff? And what other safety measures are you proposing to put in place? And I believe the relevant cabinet member will respond.
Yes, that's me, Councillor Tyndall, Cabinet Member for Resources. And the response is the planned polls for the elections in May 2021 will inevitably provide particular challenges for the returning officer and her team as a result of the pandemic situation. Planning and delivery of the election processes will be following the Electoral Commission published guidelines, learning gained from the recent elections held in Scotland, and their advice sought from public health bodies so that those who choose to exercise their democratic right to vote in person can do so in a COVID secure manner. Venues in use for election purposes will be subject to a detailed risk assessment and appropriate safety measures put in place to protect both voters and staff. Whilst every effort will be made to encourage people to register for postal voting as an alternative to voting in person through a variety of channels of public communications and campaigns, this will not include the distribution of applications with their council tax bill. This is due to the complexity of administration required and potential for confusion by residents in the receipt of blanket communications. That's the end of my response.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. That's very helpful. Sure, people are, especially officers, will be assured that there are measures in place. Thank you very much. I can detect somebody's microphone is on, and it does provide some background sound. If I can just remind councillors, please have your camera and microphone off unless you want to speak. Item number 4 on your agenda is the council's official announcements. I did provide a written report, which is in your pack. There's a small error where it states that there's a zero missing from the £73,000 that was donated by Island Roads to community grants. And also, I did had an email circulated this morning about the Holocaust Memorial Day, which will take place on the 27th of January. Haven't council normally take the lead on this. I normally attend that personally, but due to circumstances that is cancelled this year. But the invitation is open to all councillors who wish to join that live. It's a pre-recorded service on Facebook at 11 a.m. All the details are in the email that was circulated this morning. It's a very important commemoration, and we mustn't forget that. Can I go to item number 5, please, which is the Leaders Update Report? And I invite Councillor Stewart to speak. Councillor Stewart, you have 5 minutes to update us on your report. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chair, I'll just wait a couple of seconds while the facilities are adjusted.
Yep.
Right, colleagues, my report for this full council is presented at page 17 of the papers, and in introducing my report, I wish to make the following additional comments. Firstly, I wish to extend my thanks to all those in our community already actively involved in the island response to COVID-19. This includes our 33 town and parish councils with some 209 representative positions in our local communities, and who are engaged with the Isle of Wight Council, the Cabinet and myself on a regular basis. Also to all of our 26 COVID response community hubs across the island, with hundreds of volunteers working hard for the island and meeting together through the community forum chaired by Councillor Jill Kennett from the West Wight, supported by our Assistant Director Ian Lloyd, the diverse range of heads of organisations attending meetings led by the island's MP, Bob Seeley, to which I and other leaders are invited, including the Lord Lieutenant, the island's High Sheriff, the Chair of the Federation of Small Businesses, and the Chair of the Chamber of Commerce. Overall, this huge level of support and commitment which already exists across the island is without exception, and recognises just how fully engaged people are in protecting and supporting the island through the pandemic and working beyond into economic recovery. At this point, I would also report that this administration has no plans to finance, resource or support the establishment of any citizens' assembly for another 100 people, as suggested by the motion from Councillor Lilley, which, if it is not withdrawn for the reasons I've indicated, I will respond to later in the meeting. Suffice it to say at this stage, through my report, that in my view, our staff, those of the NHS, the CCG, our other public service colleagues, and all those working in the voluntary sector should all receive our praise. I thank them all for their efforts, and we know we should not burden you further. I also wish to report to members on our new coastal community strategy being developed by Councillor Hastings. This will encompass actions to improve our holiday tourism offer by enhancing beach safety, developing a voice for those living and working along our coast, and building on the substantial £40 million funding from government received to protect our coastal community for flooding and help us build back better as we rejuvenate our holiday sector, hospitality sector. Finally, I wish to report that the procurement process for Dinosaur Isle is in its final stages of completion. This major project will include a huge range of facilities to attract more visitors to the island. I am aware it has attracted interest from significant private sector partners now involved in the procurement process. And if this all comes to fruition, we will have an unrivaled tourism offer right in the heart of the Bay coastal community area, boosting the economy of Sandown Lake, Shanklin and beyond. I noted the suggestion being put forward by Councillor Andre for an Eden type project, which is an ambitious but as yet unfunded proposal. So I would encourage Councillor Andre to work with our Environmental and Heritage Lead member, Councillor Hastings, to see what practical opportunities could be added to our existing project work, which is currently involving ARC Consulting, including the Biosphere Centre at Branston Farm, undertaken with over £2 million of LET financial support, and the environmentally friendly Dinosaur project for the Bay community, on which I have already briefed. Finally, can I conclude my report by repeating that the priorities of this administration in these difficult times are to continue to provide strong leadership, keep our community safe, and regenerate the island's economy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, and thank you. That's a very comprehensive report. If I could allow questions, please. I have a list of speakers ready. We have got 15 minutes only, and I'll take questions relating specifically to the leader's report. If I can ask Councillor Perks first, please. Could you please ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'd like to ask the leader if I could possibly have a copy of the 34 exceptions that are given to or by White Link and Red Funnel. An email copy would suffice. And also, did yourself or our MP actually make inquiries with government as to whether the Isle of Wight could have its own set of rules, being as we are an exception to the rest of the country, as in we're an island? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Perks. The first part, I think you're referring to the exceptions for travel, of which there are many, and I certainly can ask officers to forward to you, although they are available through government websites as well, but I'm sure that can be arranged. The second part, we have an ongoing dialogue with the ferry companies. I had a meeting with all the senior people there most recently, and our Island MP, Bob Seeley, has been constantly engaged with government on the whole question of ferry travel. You will have seen, of course, that the government has now agreed a further funding support for the ferries in order that all our essential workers, our essential goods, and those that do have legitimate reasons for travel, and there are many, as you rightly indicated, can continue to do so. That dialogue continues and will continue until we're clear of this virus and we can all get back to some degree of normality. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.
Could I ask Councillor Hastings to pose the next question, please? Councillor Hastings. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for that to go live. Would the leader agree with me that following the Cabinet decision on the Beach Management Strategic Framework and Action Plan that you have mentioned in your report, for the formation of a coastal community forum with cross-Solent membership will also make sure we have cohesive, collaborative operations with other authorities on beach safety and enforcement policies in the Solent, and is a very positive next step for the island.
So I'll just wait a few seconds until thank you for your question, Councillor Hastings. I would very much agree and encourage this partnership working. It aligns with our vision for the future, and following conversations I have already had with representatives from Bournemouth Council, Southampton City Council, Portsmouth City Council, and representatives from the Local Government Association, it will provide a further opportunity to build on our plan to keep people safe when they come and enjoy all that is the Isle of Wight and what we have to offer.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Thank you. Where Councillor Ward wanted to ask a question, but I would take Councillor Fuller next, please. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a quick question on your report, paragraph 27. Please, can we have an update on the island deal and why the fair funding review has been allowed to slip to 2022-23? Next month, we will be making some very, very tough decisions on next year's budget, and knowing that the government has allowed these things that are so important to the island and the impact that it will have upon our islanders to slip is questionable, and I would like to have an update from the leader on what steps we're taking. We keep on hearing that you're talking to the government, to ministers, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere. And this, you know, we've had 2 years now that we've been waiting for the island deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fuller, for your question. I would start by saying we haven't let anything slip, actually. We've been on this despite the COVID commitments that we've got. Let me just deal with a fair funding review. This is a decision by government that it be moved to 2023-4. And you will all be aware, I'm sure you've read the papers, that the Isle of Wight has a specific paragraph in the report, and clearly we look forward to that being realised. But of course, 2023-24 is sometime down the line, and you're absolutely right. We face a very significant challenge with our funding, albeit the reserves that we built up over the last 4 years have significantly helped us. The fact is, we never expected to be dealing with a COVID pandemic, and so we have prioritised keeping people safe. In terms, excuse me, in terms of the island deal, as you know, I wrote personally to the Prime Minister, copied to the Chief Secretary for the Treasury as was, who is now the Chancellor, and excuse me, and to the MHCLG MP Robert Jenrick, Secretary of State, to remind them, despite all that they're doing, that we haven't forgotten, because it is so important to the island. Since that time, our MP Bob Seeley has asked a question in the House of Commons, and the response to that from the Secretary of State was to agree to have a meeting with him to discuss this. Since then, I have had a meeting with our MP, our Finance Officer and our Chief Executive as we prepare all the papers and information that will go into that meeting. I am aware that that dialogue with the Secretary of State and his representative continues even to today. And as soon as we have an update on that, I will inform full council and make sure that you're part of that.
Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next in line would be Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. Will you please ask your question? Yep. Could you unmute yourself, please, Councillor?
I'm trying to.
You muted again.
Hello, Hello, sorry, apologies. Just relates to your the last part of the leader's report, where leader, you're talking about the regeneration of our economy and underpinned by a sustainable financial strategy. With regards to the floating bridge, obviously we're all praying that there's going to be a successful claim and financial recompense coming forward. But I think what people are asking me for is that this money, if it's forthcoming, is ring fenced for a new vessel and not poured into the current vessel, Floating Bridge 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
So my question is basically, will it be ring fenced? Thank you.
Yep.
Chair, I seek your guidance because the floating bridge isn't mentioned in my report, and as you know, is subject to legal action at the moment.
I don't think, no, you're right. It's not, should be to the leader's report. You may.
Yeah, it was section 45, Chair, if that's helpful. We were talking about the regeneration of our economy and sustainable financial strategy. I think sustainable financial strategy is to get a new floating bridge.
I don't know if you're aware, but the floating bridge issue is under talks at the moment, and it could be a fragile situation as it is. Perhaps if you write to the leader separately, he may consider giving you a reply. But while we're in the process of that, I don't think it would be right to answer that question at the moment. Sorry. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Just wait a moment for it to come forward. Chair, question to the leader. First of all, just to associate myself, and I'm sure everybody, with your remarks about everybody who has been working so hard to combat this pandemic, and also to echo your congratulations to Laura Gaudian on her BEM. My question is around business support and on regeneration, both of which are in your report. Business support comes in two ways: one in keeping current business going, but also ensuring that new business can emerge after the worst part of this pandemic is over. I wonder if, Leader, would you agree with me, as indeed the Liberal Democrats have pushed in amendments before at budget time, that now is a time to provide more focus to encouraging entrepreneurship and small business creation, and that may mean placing in abeyance some of the larger schemes around regeneration, which will take far longer to realise their goals and have less impact at this most important time. Thank you.
Oh, I'll just wait for it. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Councillor Garrett, for your comments of support for my comments, if you like, for the people that are working so hard. I don't think there's anybody in the council chamber who wouldn't echo that. I think I know they're very busy. I know that the hospital are working really hard. I get briefings on a regular basis, and all I can say to the wider public is we are very lucky to have that quality of service on the island, and I'm very pleased we have. Turning to your other very relevant question around regeneration and small businesses, first part is we are very fortunate on the island that we have done really well with our small business grant funding support come through from government. We did so in the first lockdown, and again I will specifically name our Assistant Director Ashley Curzon and his team for the amazing work they're doing to get grants out fast, because as you rightly indicate, some small businesses will go if we can't help them now, and we've done that before and we will do that again, and we have discretionary funds to do so. Through your question, I will remind the members of the public that they really should put in an application in order to get that grant in. The second point, I think, in terms of the future, you make an interesting point. Obviously, I'm pleased to report that our investment in Venture Keys has now seen 3 separate people or groups involved there. Obviously, Rapanui, which people will be familiar with, doing a fantastic job, a marine training company, and indeed an IT organisation, which in the current climate of digital is very valuable, and we would encourage that as well. We've also put shovels in the ground, if you like, at Branston Farm, where in addition to the 42 houses of affordable housing, there's investment there for the infrastructure, so that's good. So I think we are doing your suggestion that we look at short and sharp businesses in addition to the bigger areas is certainly something that I'm aware we are already looking at. And frankly, we will help all businesses. And as you know, this administration has worked hard to bring over to the island in the summer events like the Tour of Britain, the cycle event, and other big events like that, because we can see opportunities for immediate recovery. I think it's something with your background and experience, I'll be very happy to have a quality conversation on, because we really do need to do everything to help our island community here and the economy. And I thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you. Councillor Stevens, you are next. Could you make it a very short one? I would like to bring other people in before we run out of time.
What I will do, Chairman, is I will withdraw on the assumption that the motion by Councillor Lilley will be held and taken through. If not, I will bring it through on member question time, if that's okay with both yourself and the Leader. And I'll withdraw now and allow someone else to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Could I bring in Councillor Ward, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Leader, following on from your clear statement about the current procurement process that is underway in relation to Dinosaur Isle, the residents of Sandown need to see clear movement on this project. All the time that we have a vacuum, people will become impatient and will try to fill that vacuum with nebulous ideas that may disrupt this important project. The residents of Sandown have waited long enough. Can you provide reassurance that we will not be just relying upon popular statements from members across the chamber and that actual steps are underway on this project? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I'll just wait. Thank you, Councillor Ward, for your question and for raising your concerns on behalf of the residents of Sandown. As I indicated in my report earlier, steps are underway within the procurement process that the council must follow when it is dealing with council assets and council monies. It is easy to suggest a project or ambition, and I'm sure that in the coming months we will see many more being made from across the chamber. I am, however, at this time focused on actual costed proposals, and in this case a procurement process which officers have followed correctly and are seeking to complete in a very timely manner. As with Venture Keys, which we successfully purchased, Branston Farm, in which we are currently investing for the future, and Dinosaur, which is following due process, these are projects in action, not ideas in the mind. Council assets are precious, and our community expects us to deliver projects on time and in budget, which incidentally I note you have done, Councillor Ward, with your oversight of the St Mary's Junction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Councillor Love, got a question to ask the Leader on his report. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was actually going to be about the fair funding deal and review, and you've answered that, which I thank you for. But leading on from that, could we have an update, please, about where our current reserves are and what we've spent so far and what we might expect to spend? I just want to point out on point 44, it says we are looking ahead to the budget requirements for next year. I think I'd like to deal with this year first, if you don't mind. That's clearly a grammar typing, and I've written to you about the floating bridge, so I'll leave that one for the moment.
Yeah, well, thank you for acknowledging that's not in the report. So, Councillor Love, let's deal with current reserves. These will be laid out in some detail in the budget report of next month, which you will certainly get sight of in some detail when we come to prepare that. What I would say about the current reserves is, had we not got them, and I look back 4 years to the place we were when we first came into the administration, the current pandemic, which we've had to cope with, would have presented us a major issue. Notwithstanding that we were told at that time that we were not able to move forward and our budget was in a crisis. In fact, I think somebody walked out on that basis. We actually have been very careful with our money, and we didn't know at that time we had the pandemic to deal with. So those reserves have been tremendous to help us through. But you are right, and as you will see when you get the papers next month, they aren't where they were 4 years ago. But I think it's the right thing. Why do you have reserves? You have reserves at times of crisis, and we are in a time of crisis. But I think you'll be reasonably assured that we've been prudent when you see the detail. In relation to the budget requirements, there are two parts. There is this year's budget, so what we're currently spending against what we said we would do back last February. And I am quietly confident that we will be in a place where we can balance the books, is the phrase, because otherwise, again, had we not done so, we would have been one of those local authorities that would go with a begging bowl to government, asking them to bail us out and may even have been taken over. We're not in that place. But the budget actually that you see in February will project through next year because we have to have a strategic view on things. And as you know, probably we have a £3.5 million budget gap to fill for the next 3 years. And although we have yet to receive the island deal, if we do or we don't, we still have to give balanced books to the public. So we do have a contingency plan in place. And I hope that when you see what we propose to do, we can draw on your support because it will be important that all councillors take it forward. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Thank you, Councillor Love. I'm afraid we ran out of time here. We'll have to leave the rest till towards the end when there's members' questions. We'll have to move on to the next item, which is item number 6 on your agenda. If you have a look.
Chairman, can I just, sorry, just to make a declaration of interest. I think the fact that I've got family members that work in schools, I've been sitting here thinking about, I think that it probably is a pecuniary interest, albeit indirectly. So I will not participate in this particular item, the payee Python.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. And I'm asking Councillor Tyndall to present the paper, please, and propose it.
Thank you, Chair. As you will see from the report, the pay policy is updated on an annual basis to reflect any changes in the pay and conditions of the council staff. It is fully explained in the report. The minor changes to the pay policy are outlined in paragraph 2. Unless there are any questions, I ask that we go to the vote and agree the recommendation that the pay policy is adapted as drafted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tyndall. We need a seconder for that one, please.
Stuart Hutchinson here, Chairman. I'm happy to second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. Would you like to speak on it at the moment?
No, thank you, Chairman. I will reserve that.
Okay, right. Does any member wish to speak on this item?
No, I think the report speaks for itself and there's very little I could add to that.
Councillor Brodie, thank you very much. It is self-explanatory. Just for clarification, Councillor Brodie, good evening. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Right, yes. Once again, it seems that every time we get the pay policy, it just goes through on the nod. And Councillor Tyndall, with his vast experience of this council, says it's there's nothing to quibble about effectively. But I think there are things to quibble about sometimes. The pay policy produces some very illuminating information showing the range of salaries that we pay the staff of the Isle of Wight Council, from an astonishing £130,000 a year down to a very minimal £18,000 a year. And if we look at, I think it's Appendix H, the very last page of all the appendices, it shows the distribution of earnings across the staff of the Isle of Wight Council, which shows that in Band 7 and below, the majority of staff are earning below the median earnings of the Isle of Wight Council, which is £24,000 a year. And Band 4 has the vast majority of staff earning between 18 and 19,000 a year. Now, as I say, every year the pay policy goes through effectively on the nod. We do have to have a pay policy. I appreciate that. But it's one of those papers where I feel this councillors don't address the issues that are presented to them in full. And although I'm not going to suggest that we reject it tonight because we need it in place, but it would be interesting to hear the views of the cabinet member, or perhaps the leader of the council, as to whether they think it's appropriate that the increase in salary to senior officers of this council has gone up so much under their administration. I recall when the chief executive earned less than 100,000 not so long ago, back in about 2015, 16, I believe it was. It's gone up by 30%, and yet low wage staff on this council continue to be relatively low paid. Surely it is the duty of the Isle of Wight Council as a significant employer to pay salaries to people who work for them, who we all think the world of, who everybody's given accolades to during COVID, but surely we should be doing everything we possibly can to enhance their salaries, to make sure that people can have a reasonable quality of life, and perhaps, just perhaps, be able to get some security of tenure in the housing situation. I'll leave it there, Chair, but I would appreciate the comments of Councillor Tyndall and or Councillor Stewart as to how they would address the pay policy should something really bad happen next May or whatever it is, then be re-elected as an administration. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Brody. Do appreciate that.
Can I stop you there, please?
Yeah.
Would you write it down and respond when you sum up at the end?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Questions first. Thank you. Councillor Stevens is next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just an observation here that whilst we go ahead with proposals and we as members evaluate and accept, is there any thought on future adjudication or comment from an external body that can give us some balance to this, rather than it coming straight through from our system within County Hall and the administration onto the members on a full council meeting. I think that this might well give balance and validation to council employees having increases in their salaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Are there any other questions for Councillor Tyndall on this policy agenda paper? If not, I can ask Councillor Tyndall if you would please sum up.
Okay, right. Councillor Brody's, he talked about Appendix F, which does show the range of grades of employees. I would suggest if he went to any major business who had the number of employers as such as ours, the spread would probably be the same. And I don't think that's anything. One thing, obviously, one thing this doesn't actually show on here, although it shows all the grades, and perhaps it's something we should do for the future, is it doesn't show how many of them are part-time employees as well, because that may actually change things as well. But I think it's a very fair graph, and I got no issues with it. Councillor Stevens, if he's looking for an outside peer review of our pay policy, I'm not aware of that. Perhaps Councillor Hutchinson may have more details on that because he's was in the job for longer than I am. So I think you could ask Councillor Stevenson. But I've ducked it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to comment on that.
That's
yeah.
the debate. That's the debate. Yeah. Sorry.
And you can hear me. Yeah.
We can't. It's been debated now. I've been told we've been debating this. We've done a debate on this. Yeah,
okay. Well, I was simply responding as the seconder. I believe I reserve my right to comment, and I'd be happy to comment on the questions that have been asked.
Okay. Councillor Tyndall made his closing speech. Therefore, it's been debated.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Without we going to the vote. No, go for it. Thank you. No, yes. If we can indicate if you vote for the paper or against when I call your name. And I will start with Councillor Barry Abraham.
He's absent.
Councillor Axford.
For.
Councillor Bertie.
For.
Councillor Beston.
For.
Councillor Brading.
I'll abstain.
Councillor Chapman. Connection problems. Councillor Churchman.
For.
Councillor Hastings.
For.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Hobart.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Hutchinson.
For.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
For.
Councillor Mosdell.
For.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Outlaw.
For.
Councillor Peace.
For.
Councillor Price.
For.
Councillor Quirk.
For.
Councillor Tinton. Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Whittle.
Councillor Outlaw is sharing his screen, Chair.
Yeah.
Did you get my 4?
Sorry, Councillor Whittle is for. Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Downer.
For.
Councillor Fuller. Councillor Fuller. We'll come back to you. Councillor Lilley.
Abstain.
Councillor Medland.
For.
Councillor PC Wilcox.
For.
Councillor Jones Evans.
So did you call me then?
Yes, Councillor Jones Evans.
Yes, I can't hear you. Sorry. Yes, for.
Councillor Love.
For.
Councillor Brodie.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Abstain.
Councillor Parry.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Merwell.
For.
Against, sorry.
Councillor Smart.
For.
And Councillor Stewart.
Abstain.
I don't think you called my name, Chair.
Councillor Ward. Councillor Tyndall.
I think 4.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, because you presented the paper.
Chairman, Councillor Howe.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lilley. Abstain. And Councillor Fuller. Councillor Fuller. Breaking up. And Councillor Chapman.
If you can hear me, Chair, I'm for, but you're breaking up all the time.
Thank you, Councillor. That's it. Thank you. I will announce while I wait for the result. Could I just remind councillors to turn your camera and your microphone off while not speaking? That is 32 for.
Can I abstain, please, Chairman?
4 abstentions.
Chairman, can I abstain?
Councillor
It's
Fuller.
Councillor Paul Fuller.
Thank you. That's
Chairman. Chairman, it's Councillor Paul Fuller. Can I abstain?
Got that. I've got that. Yes.
Thank you.
5 abstentions. 34 for and 2 against. That paper carries as proposed by Councillor Tyndall. Thank you very much. If we go on to the next paper, which is item B on item 6, and it is local council tax support. And again, Councillor Tyndall will move the paper.
Thank you again, Chair. You have before you the committee report on the local council tax reduction scheme. As you will see, this is a very full report on the scheme and the recommendation it proposes. In line with this administration's aim to supply sound financial management, this paper is a reflection of our desire to put in place a fair and equitable scheme to those residents who have need of this support scheme. This sound financial management has been shown in the ability of this administration to present balanced budgets over its time in office, something the last independent administration failed to do, and was also able to create a reserve which has been necessary to use during the current challenge of COVID-19. This report explains the reason this report has been has to be put before the full council and the rationale as to the recommendation proposed. In line with the requirements of the support scheme, a consultation was undertaken, and details of this are given at appendices 1, 1A, 1B and 1C to this report. Of the 286 respondents, only 44 stated they were in receipt of local council tax support. Examples of how these will affect recipients to this scheme are given in Appendix 3. The proposal will look to do two things. One is to make savings to obtain the financially balanced budget. The other is to make a fundamental change to the way universal credit cases are treated, to disregard the housing element as income, which will remove an inequality within the scheme compared to housing benefit cases. This is a costly change to the council outlines. You need to bear in mind there's been no increase in the amount of funding the Isle of Wight Council receives. In fact, if inflation is taken into account, about 2%, this in fact is a decrease to our funding. Added to this is the expected rise in unemployment on the island, especially as the furlough scheme ends at the end of March 2021. In addition, the current COVID situation has increased the spend of the scheme by £200,000 since March, with a forecast, that's March 2020, with a forecast that this may increase to around £500,000 over the course of this financial year. Therefore, the Isle of Wight is looking at a challenge to its funding for this scheme. Of the 6 options proposed in the consultation, the decision is to go with options 1, 2 and 6. Option 3, 4 and 5 were not looked upon as acceptable due to their impact on recipients of the scheme. Option 1 is to reduce the level of support to 65% from 70%. This can fall in line with a possible increase in council tax and reflect the council's belief that all residents of the isles are treated equally, as well as providing a financially balanced and sustainable council. Option 2, with a £50 disregard, which is quite detailed but is explained in the report in paragraph 49. Both of these make significant savings to the Isle of Wight Council and help to bridge some of the £3.23 million projected funding gap between the government grant and the cost of the scheme. In addition, the current COVID situation is also causing increased funding pressures. Option 6, as I described, rationalises the difference in calculating the different approach and assessing those on universal credit and those receiving housing benefit. But this is at a substantial cost to the Isle of Wight Council, approximately £330,000. Note this figure is only an estimate and it could be more than this. The officers are unable to model this accurately with the current systems in place. I know of one member who last year had a resident on the scheme receiving housing benefit, then they found work, came off the scheme, only to find when they came employed again, as then they had to apply under universal credit, the level of the support they received was reduced. This proposed under option 6 removes this inconsistency. So the changes under option 2 and 6 provide equality and diversity within the scheme, making the scheme fairer to all. Changes proposed still give a substantial savings to the Isle of Wight, but potentially increasing unemployment. Any savings may be reduced. Council, the contact centre and service area offer support for those who have payment difficulties through the exceptional hardship scheme, which is widely published. This is explained in Appendix 5 to this report. Therefore ask that the members support the recommendation in para 65 of the report. That is the one starting from the second bullet point and the section below stated and agrees that. Now that's about 20 sentences, so I haven't repeated that. If there are any questions, I'll be more ready to answer where I can. That's the end.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Do you have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I would be happy to second that, Chairman. Stuart Hutchinson.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Now we're going to the debate on this paper. Councillor Garrett. Councillor Barry, could I ask you to turn your camera off and mute your microphone? it does affect the quality of the meeting.
I've put down to know that I want to second Councillor Garrett, and if I ain't got my microphone on, I can't, can I?
Councillor Garrett wished to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I have sent through my amendment to Democratic Services, and I think they will be displaying it at some point. But the effect of it is to retain the 70% maximum amount rather than reduce it to 65%. Can I record, Chair, my thanks to the Section 151 officer for his assistance in drafting the amendment, and to the monitoring officer for the discussions I had with him about it being in order, and he confirmed that it would be so. Each year I put forward a position on the local council tax reduction scheme proposals to be more generous to those who are hardest hit in our society here on the Isle of Wight. This year, of course, so many people have been extraordinarily hard hit, first with those personal issues, the death of loved ones, those who have become sick, the anxiety and helplessness that people have felt, but of course also loss of jobs, a loss of business, and a consequent impact on their income. I think this is not the time to move to a scheme that would hit those who have been hardest hit even harder. That is not fair. Some would describe it indeed as cruel. I'm sure none of the members of the council would want to intentionally and deliberately hit those who are hardest off even harder. But acceptance of this recommendation as moved by Councillor Tyndall would do exactly that. My amendment offers a chance to reject that move. It does come with a cost, £28,000. That is not an insignificant sum, nor that one that with political will that we couldn't, I'm sure, meet. Chair, last night in the House of Commons there was a rebellion by Conservative MPs against their government. It shows that it is possible to be a member of a party but not side with that party on a particular issue. So my appeal now goes to Conservative members of this council. You are not doing a disservice to your party in supporting this amendment. But if you do choose to support this amendment, you will do a tremendous service to those who have been the most hardest hit this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Barry, did you say you wish to speak after?
I'd like to second it, Chairman.
You seconding it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And then Councillor Stevens, you wish to speak?
I do indeed. I'm totally in support of the amendments. I think that we've got enough people with hardship on this island to warrant keeping the 70% as is. And I think that that's the way forward for those in need, and not for the handful which took part in the survey. And I know that surveys are surveys, but when you look at the numbers, it's not a vast number and a big foundation to actually drop 5% from people that are struggling and probably would have liked to take part with the consultation, but probably haven't got the means. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I'm voting for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Lilley, you are next to speak, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am in support of this amendment because I feel we cannot continue, which we have over the last few years, in reducing this support and down to 65%. This afternoon I did explore with the Isle of Wight CAB, who are in fact in opposition to this increase, and they basically said to me that just decreasing the council tax support is always going to be something we dispute against, as clients are already struggling to find 30% of the bill and having to seek methods such as insolvency to stop enforcement action, and even more fees added to clients' accounts for use of enforcement agents. In fact, the largest issue that people go to the CAB for help with on the island is in fact council tax arrears, because people are more and more having difficulty with them. The whole collection recovery process was going to be looked at this year, and with an anticipated rise again in council tax come this April, clients will already be paying more, so to decrease the support percentage with further compound clients' ability to make repayments, and we will see more households in financial hardship and unable to cover basic essential needs, placing more dependency on other services such as food banks. I basically sort of view, I also want to raise the issue that the tax base, the Isle of Wight tax base has actually reduced, and this will have a knock-on effect in increasing the precept in many of the town and parish councils as well. So I am totally against this rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilley. Councillor Fuller, you're next to speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm in very much support of the amendment. I think in the last 6 months, and I know I won't be alone here, we have all had to speak to residents who have been hit by COVID and the impact that COVID are having not only on our residents but on their families as well. You know, one of the biggest issues, as Michael referred to earlier on, is council tax debt. You know, it is a real burden for a lot of our residents in our community, and I've lost count of those people that have contacted me with concerns, who have been referred to through citizens advice. I think, you know, what is of concern to me is that a lot of these people that are embroiled with council tax debt are not the unemployed. They are our island residents who, many of them, are working and are living sort of like from day to day, from week to week. Many of them do end up visiting food banks. Many of them are in poverty, and many of them have children that are living in poverty. And I think that it's unfair and it's mean that we should be tackling. We are focusing on trying to raise a few savings from these people that can ill afford it. And for that reason, I will be supporting the amendment. If we could give more money to those people that are working, that needs the support, I would be for it, as I was for it last year. But I think as a compromise, I'm quite happy to accept Councillor Garrett's proposal and keep the council tax support at the 70% threshold. You know, I think it stands to reason that when we consulted with that, it came back loud and strongly from our town and parish council, who feel in the same way as many of us do as members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Hutchison, would you like to speak? You'd like to speak on this amendment now, or?
Can I? Yes, I'd like to speak on the amendment, please, Chairman.
Yes.
Clearly, none of us like doing this. It is one of the most difficult decisions we ever have to take. One of the pre-comments in the amendment is that the proposal is that the same amount of money should be cut from other council services. Now, I'm well aware that we have huge pressures on other services for those most in need. In particular, the cost of looked after children is escalating enormously, as is the cost of adult social care. And the government, of course, have recognised that particular one by allowing us to have a 3% additional council tax rise, which meets nowhere near the increase in cost. We're already seeing a very substantial number of claims, increasing claims for council tax support. And if we are not able to put more money into the system, then what we have to do is to spread the butter more thinly. And that is part of what we're doing here. The other part of what we're doing is to actually make the scheme equitable. We have found that because of the vagaries of the income support arrangements, some people would have been disadvantaged, and we could have had legal challenges to some of our payments as a result of that. So this report corrects that, and it also allows us to put money into the support scheme and to meet the increasing demands, which means that everybody who gets some money from that gets slightly less. We still have, of course, a very substantial hardship fund so that those who are in true need will still be protected. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Love, you'd like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Garrett on his wonderful, compassionate amendment in these incredibly difficult times. I'm against anything which is going to increase the pressures on our hardest hit and most vulnerable members of the community at this time. There's no doubt that the council will increase council tax. The Police and Crime Commissioner is also indicating the same, that he might like to increase his precepts. And then, of course, there are parish and town precepts on top of that. And so these are incredibly difficult times, and we should not be doing anything, I feel, as a councillor, to bring additional burdens to that, bearing in mind that, yes, whilst I accept that there's additional pressure on the system, on the council system of payments, because there are more people becoming redundant and needing to make claims. The fact is that is where I believe that our reserves should be used creatively to help us in this particular year, to give us a break between now and what might happen in 12 months' time from here. So I think that it's a wonderful, compassionate amendment by Councillor Garrett, and I shall be supporting that, and I would encourage others to do so for the sanity and for, you know, what is a very difficult time for all our residents. Some of us can just about afford to pay an increase in tax and so on, but there are many that cannot, and there are a great number of people who are furloughed, and this is going to affect them hugely. So I'm asking you to please consider putting the people first and beyond what is the current situation, and looking to the future to then catch up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Perks, you're next to speak, please.
Yep, sorry. I'm going to agree with the amendment. This council, we're actually paying more in council tax than many London boroughs. Our taxes over here are quite enough, and the young people that are struggling to hold on to their houses and their businesses, and particularly I can speak for the people in Ventnor, they're really struggling. They don't need to lose any more help than what we were giving them previously. In actual fact, I think they should take the council tax down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Brodie, you're next to speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I firstly just say I was pleased that Councillor Hutchinson actually referred to the severe hardship fund, because it seems to get forgotten about. It was something that I encouraged the previous administration to introduce 5 years ago when these schemes were first brought in. But from memory, we hardly use any of it, and I think all elected members, when they're dealing with people who are facing issues, probably need to start encouraging people down that route a lot more than they have been. In terms of the amendment, I will be supporting the amendment, unsurprisingly perhaps. I think it goes some way to the philosophy that I follow, not entirely, but I'm not going to quibble about the content of it. Councillor Garrett's bothered to bring an amendment along, so I will support it. What I will say is that on the previous item, we talked about pay policy, and we talked about, you know, salaries that are just beyond the dreams of many of the people we're now talking about. And if you look at the paper, it refers to the fact that we could make a saving of 336,000 if we reduce the maximum level of support to 65%. When you think about that, that's the equivalent of about 3 members of our corporate management team. And I will say that at the beginning of this administration, there were a lot less members of the corporate management team than there are now. Money was used from reserves or wherever it was. I think it was a lot of it was to do with the legendary ASDA fund to bring in more and more senior managers to build up resilience, it was called. And we were told as councillors we would get a better support. Well, frankly, as a backbench opposition member, I haven't seen that in the last few years. It seems the officers are still struggling, in inverted commas. I do think there's a hypocrisy here that you can stick your hands up for a pay policy that pays people 6-figure salaries on the corporate management team, and yet you're prepared to penalise people a few quid when those few quid are actually, it's very, very important to them in terms of feeding themselves, feeding their kids, etc. We should be ashamed of ourselves, really, if that's what you're going to stick your hands up to. I won't. I'm certainly not going to. I'm going to be able to look myself in the mirror every time this comes forward. And I hope everybody with a conscience will vote in favour of Councillor Garrett's amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Can I bring in Councillor Stewart, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the camera to go to. Yeah. So first of all, I can't comment on the pay policy as much as I may have used one way or the other. So I'm not ignoring it. I just know that I shouldn't speak to it, so I won't. I also would want to echo Councillor Brodie's comments about the hardship fund. He's absolutely right. He's one of those that encouraged the administration to develop that. And I would echo his view. We have a hardship fund for people that are in hardship. And in the same way that I often get asked, well, who do I contact if I'm in difficulty with COVID, etc.? And I say ring 823 600 because we've got a helpline that will help people. Councillor Brading has gone out of his way to make sure no children on this island go without food. So I would, on those bases and only examples, not accept any criticism that we are not or we are cruel, as the member said. I think we're doing everything we can within the funds that we've got. I got asked a number of questions about the island deal. Absolutely. If somebody rang me up today and said there's a cheque in the post for £6.4 million every year, we'd all be in a different place, but we're not. And I know that we've got to set a council tax next month, which is also going to be painful. But the bottom line is, if the administration, on behalf of the people of the Isle of Wight, don't maintain sound financial control, we would be in a far, far worse position, and we would have an awful lot of people who would be feeling the impact of that. I am very sympathetic, genuinely very sympathetic to the hardship of people, and I know people close to members and others who are in that place. So please do not let anybody think they can't eat. Please do not let anybody think they can't draw on our hardship if they qualify. But we have to deal with council finances in the way that we are to sustain it. We'll look next month at our reserves, and it's astounding the amount of money that we've had to spend to just stay where we are. But that was about COVID. We've got to keep people safe. There are families of far worse position, have lost members. I haven't, but I have no friends that have. So we've got to work together. I will not be supporting the amendment. I will be supporting the motion, but I'm grateful for all the comments that are made. I hear councillors across the chamber saying what they really feel, and that's a good thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. There's no more speakers on the amendment, so I would ask Councillor Tindall, would you like to speak on the amendment itself?
I think All I'd like to say is obviously Councillor Stewart and Councillor Hutchinson have actually outlined many of the other things which I think included in my initial statement and narrative to the council, and I got really nothing else to add to that other than we keep going on about the reserves. If this administration had built up the reserves, there would have been nothing there for us to get through this difficult time at the moment. At that, obviously I'm going to be voting against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Thank you very much. On that note, I think we've debated this amendment, so up to the point where because I'm conscious of time as well, I'm going to take a vote on the amendment. So I will call your names out in the usual way, and if you could be ready with your microphone on, and I will call Councillor Abraham is not here. Councillor Axford.
Against.
On the amendment.
Against.
Councillor Bertie.
Against.
Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Brading.
Against.
Councillor Chapman. He's put offline. Against. Councillor Churchman. Bad connection. I'll come back. Councillor Hastings.
Against.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Hobart.
Against.
Councillor Hollis.
Against.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Against.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
Against.
Councillor Mosdale.
Abstain.
Councillor Nicholson.
Abstain.
Councillor Outlaw.
Against.
Councillor Peace.
Against.
Councillor Price.
Against.
Councillor Quirk.
Against.
Councillor Tindall.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Whittle.
Against.
Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Downer.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Lilley.
For.
Councillor Medland.
For.
Councillor Wilcox. PC Wilcox.
Thank you. For.
Councillor Jones Evans.
For.
Councillor Love. Councillor Love.
My apologies, for.
And Councillor Brodie.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Murwell.
For.
Councillor Perks.
For.
I'll vote against. Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart.
For.
And Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Churchman.
For.
For the amendment. Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's the vote. So 17 is for the amendment, 20 against the amendment, and there's 2 abstentions. So the amendment falls. Thank you, councillors. We're going back to the substantive proposal, to the paper, and we can debate the substantive motion, which Councillor Tindall proposed. Does any member wish to speak on the substantive motion? Nope. Would you please sum up in that case? Councillor Tindall, you can sum up and then we go to the vote on that one. Oh, sorry. Before you do, Councillor Fuller just indicated you'd like to speak on the substantive motion. Councillor Fuller, would you please come in?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I think one of the issues that I have on this is the exceptional hardship fund. You know, the bar for a lot of people is far too high. It would be interesting to know really from Councillor Tyndall how many people and how much money has been claimed successfully through the exceptional hardship fund, because my understanding is that it is not a great deal. Now, if it is not a great deal and that fund is there and available to support people that are on low incomes, let's use it. Let's not make it difficult for people to access. Let's try to help those people that do desperately need it. We've got a lot of very desperate people out there, and I certainly can support it, but I would like some reassurance about the exceptional hardship fund from Councillor Tyndall, please.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, I'm afraid there's no questions on this. This is a debate. We're not asking questions in this. You might get a written response from Councillor Tyndall if you wish to reply to you. Councillor Garrett is next to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm disappointed that the amendment didn't make it through, but I note the close margin there, and I hope that in future years we'll be able to secure a better deal for the hardest hit on the island, hopefully after the elections. Councillor Fuller has asked for figures, and indeed, as you would expect, I would sort that data. And last year there were, I am told, 167 applications approved, and 88 were declined, apparently mainly due to having sufficient income to afford council tax instalments after the LCTS had been applied. I would quibble with that because, of course, it's quite a hard boundary to cross in order to get money from the hardship fund, as I see it. And I think Councillor Fuller is absolutely right that we need to find a way of relaxing it a little bit and being much more aware of the impacts of people's hardships. So very much to move towards the spirit of what this hardship fund is, not necessarily the letter. So the spend in the financial year, I was told, was £34,865 out of a hardship fund of £160,000. We can all members of the council, however you voted on the amendment, I do appeal to you to spread the word that there is this fund available to those who are experiencing hardship, and really do encourage people to come forward. Do not let debt eat away at you. The council, although it has avoided taking on my amendment, it does have a scheme in place to at least help in some ways, and I hope that will be taken up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Next to speak is Councillor Julie Jones-Evans. If you'd like to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Garrett, for putting forward your amendment. And I did really support all of the other members that were supporting you and echo their comments. It's just, you know, the Isle of Wight, you know, as I mentioned a lot, it was pinpointed back in June by the Institute of Fiscal Studies as one of the places in the country that was going to be most hit by COVID, along with Torbay. And studies have also shown that the COVID pandemic has actually widened the gap between those that have and those that have not, the rich and the poor. So we really need to think about what we're doing to people's pockets in this coming year. Because you know, when you are in that situation, close to poverty, every penny does count. It really does. So, you know, we all want a more equal and fair society, and at the moment we're not getting there. We're not able to bridge that divide yet. The social mobility going down. But there's one thing, of course, that we, you know, all adults in this country do have as equal, and that we all have a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. With nobody else to speak, I will ask Councillor Tyndall to sum up before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think Councillor Stewart and Councillor Atkinson answered. I said many of the things I would have said, so I won't repeat those. I hear what Councillor Fuller says about, and Garrett and Jones Evans about the hardship fund. I'll try to get some more information together about that and send them to them. But obviously, yes, we do try to persuade as many people as we can to apply for the hardship fund, and it is there to support people. And I think it's a dreadful balance that we're having to do, is to complete and continue to supply the services to all the residents without hurting others. And that's what we're looking to do. By being an efficient administration, we can do that. If we followed the last administration, I don't know where we'd be. So I ask everyone to vote for this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. If we can go to the vote. Again, the same counts. So this is on the substantive proposal from Councillor Tindall. Councillor Abraham's not here. Councillor Axford.
For.
Councillor Bertie.
For.
Councillor Beston.
For.
Councillor Brading.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman, we come back to you. Councillor Churchman.
For.
Councillor Hastings.
For.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Hobart.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Hutchinson. For. Councillor Kilpatrick.
For.
Councillor Mosdale.
Abstain.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Outlaw.
For.
Councillor Pease.
For.
Councillor Price.
For.
Councillor Quirk.
For.
Councillor Tindall.
For.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Whittle.
For.
Councillor Andre.
Against.
Councillor Downer.
Against.
Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Agreed.
Councillor Lilley.
Against.
Councillor Medlin.
Against.
Councillor PC Wilcox.
Against.
Councillor Jones Evans.
Against.
Councillor Love.
Against.
Councillor Brody.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Barry.
Against.
Councillor Garrett.
Against.
Councillor Murwell.
Against.
Councillor Perks.
Against.
I vote for. Councillor Smart.
Against.
And Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Chapman, have you rejoined us yet? He's offline. He said he will come back when he can. So, thank you. Let's count them up. That is 21 for, 16 against, and 1 abstention. So that motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Now we go on to the next paper, which is item number 7 on your agenda. And it is appointments to the committees. Councillor Tindall again. You've got 5 minutes, please.
Before I start, Chair, I have to move a motion on this. I don't want to do it after my little speech or beforehand, because at the moment we've got an Appendix A, which we need to use the revised Appendix A, which should have been sent out to all members. So do you want to put a motion out that be accepted before I start to speak, or do it after?
Have you got a seconder for that?
Councillor Stewart.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Chair, and I'll speak if required.
Thank you. So we need to vote on it. No, we don't vote now. Okay, if you put that through, please, Councillor.
So you just want me to read it out to you? Yep.
Yes.
I move the motions as set out in, hang on. I move the motion set out in paragraphs 25, 26 and 27 of the report with reference to the revised Appendix A to confirm and appoint those nominated by the respective political groups in their allocated seats as contained in revised Appendix A, confirm and appoint to any unallocated seats those unnamed group councillors as contained in the revised Appendix A, to confirm and appoint named substitutes as contained in revised Appendix A. That was given to me by the monitoring officer.
Chair, can I have a point of order, please? It should actually be, there is another appendix subsequent to the revised appendix, which the monitoring officer has submitted, and I think he's about to come in. It's final Appendix A.
Thank you.
Well done.
Please come in and explain. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Chris Potter, the monitoring officer. Just confirming that the following discussions with all group leaders and ungrouped members, we've finally come to the final Appendix A. So effectively, the motion which has been put, I think, will be revised by the mover and the seconder to replace the words revised Appendix A to literally final Appendix A, which I believe will meet the wishes of all the groups and the ungrouped members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. That clarifies. Right. Thank you. Councillor Tindall.
Revised 4 times, it is now final. You don't want to read it all out.
Final Appendix A. Yes. Okay. It's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
So do you have a seconder for that? You have seconder?
I'll second. I just want to briefly speak on it, Chair.
Yes, please, Councillor Stewart.
I will first of all want to thank the monitoring officer for his patience. I think as a relatively new monitoring officer, having had to deal with a number of councillors who have robust views and very much cited on the history of our appointments to committees, I think he's used his gentle skills to get us to where we need to be legally, so I want to thank him. I also want to thank my colleagues across the council. We know we have to get our proper ducks lined up in a row here, and this is what it does. There will be obviously the opportunity at future full council meetings or indeed the AGM to tidy up any representation that's not there. And I hope that, and I'm particularly conscious actually of Councillor Barry and Audit, which is a very important committee. I've certainly done my best to make sure that he's got people there that are not conflicting with the scrutiny committees or any of the other committees, because that is an important role. And I just want to thank the members for that. So thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Stewart. I've got people listed to speak. I will bring it in a minute, Councillor Barry. If I can have Councillor Andre first. Thank you. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, I'm live. I would like to echo Councillor Stewart's comments. I think I'm very grateful to the monitoring officer for his time, quite considerable time, in trying to come to some kind of solution for this. Whilst I completely agree and understand the thrust of the necessity for this revision in order to make sure that we are legally compliant, it has unwittingly presented certainly my group with a particular issues, especially as has been highlighted with Audit Committee, in the respect that we, if we are to satisfy the criteria, it only means that there's one member of our group. We do not have anybody that could deputise, and it also, and I have discussed with the monitoring officer, there is a bigger issue here, that I think it's vitally important that not only do we have that we fill the seats on these committees, but that we have the right people with the requisite skills. And unfortunately, in this revision, and I say I do understand the thrust for it, but in this revision, it does not allow, certainly in the case of my group, to have the right people with the right skills in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Councillor Brodie, you are next to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think that the process regarding the Constitution and this paper has been an example of great working by this council. I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a mess as a result of the work of Mr. Potter's interim predecessor on this council with his revision of the Constitution. I had a number of people, members will recall, I had a number of amendments prepared for our last meeting, but we never got around to allowing me to propose the majority of them, and some of them might have helped us avoid some of the situations that we're in. And I do think that to start introducing the sort of changes that we're seeing 25 years into this unitary authority has been entirely mishandled. We've had a succession of monitoring officers, all of whom presumably knew what they were doing, and yet now we're presented with the interim chap who went, and now Mr. Potter, who apparently believed that all of our previous monitoring officers were wrong in the way with which we did things. And the examples of that are, as referred to by Councillor Andre, the Audit Committee, which has become a total mess. And if I was Councillor Barry, I'd be wondering what he's landed himself in becoming the chair of that committee, because it certainly hasn't got the appropriate people there. And I suspect certain members of other groups have been press ganged into that. Secondly, the whole issue of substitutes has become an absolute farce. Both Councillor Stevens and I have no respect for scrutiny on this council. We have no intention of participating, and it gives it a credibility it does not merit. And we have always been happy for those that do give it some form of credibility to take any places that we may have on them. And for example, Councillor Jones-Evans was happily participating in the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration. She enjoys that. Neither Councillor Stevens or I wanted it, but she's now been kicked off that, and there will now be a vacancy. And I would suggest to lose Councillor Jones-Evans, who was, albeit very briefly, a cabinet member for Regeneration back in early 2017, is a bit of a mistake. She's an experienced councillor who takes an interest in Regeneration, and I think it's a significant mistake that she's not going to be sat there. We also know that scrutiny corporately has become a joke, to be frank, with the administration chairing that, having a majority on it. It was always going to happen under this administration. I did nothing to stop that because I lost all faith in scrutiny on this council nearly 3 years ago. But I do think we want to stop clapping officers on the back about what I consider to have been a mishandled process. I will vote against this paper. I hope, and I hope genuinely, that whomever runs this council from May, they will take a serious look at what's happened in previous months and get back to some common sense about our audit committee, about scrutiny on this council, and about the use of substitutes, because frankly, it doesn't work at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. You made some points there. I'm afraid we ran out of time. Councillor Barry. Councillor Barry, would you like to speak next? Councillor Barry. Oh, I think Councillor Barry has taken a phone call. He's indicated he would like to speak. Does any other councillor would like to speak? No, in that case. No, that's it. That's it. Councillor Hollis. Would you please come in, Councillor Hollis?
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I absolutely take great exception to what Councillor Brodie has said. I have received nothing but praise about the Scrutiny Committee. We no longer have grandstanding, and we actually get on with the business in hand, which is to be a critical friend of the administration, not the sort of rubbish, bigoted diatribe that we used to listen to from others. So I really take exception to that, but there we are. He's perfectly entitled to his opinion. Perhaps that's why there's only formally one Labour member and other people actually form this administration.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Thank you very much. If nobody else wishes to speak, shall we try Councillor Barry again? Councillor Barry? No. I'm afraid that's it then. If not a councillor wishes to speak,
Chair.
Councillor Brodie.
Yes, Chair. Could I just say that Councillor Hollis may take exception, but that is the nature of debate. I disagree with him. I think scrutiny fails miserably. It's as simple as that. He may take exception to that, and I can also just correct him. I have not been a member of the Labour Party for 3 years. I'm pleased at that situation. I remain a democratic socialist. One thing I'm certainly not is a member of the Conservative Party. Thank God for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Could I have Councillor Ian Stevens, please? Thank you.
I wasn't going to talk, but I feel that I must come in alongside Councillor Brodie, my fellow group member, because he did mention me, and I have to concur with his thoughts on it, on the scrutiny side of the House, but also with regard to the appointments of councillors on various committees, etc. It's got too long-winded, and I think bringing it forward to a council meeting to put people on and ask for substitutes, etc., is making a mountain out of a molehill. What we did in the past, if it was incorrect, it was incorrect. What we should actually, as I've said before, if we're doing things wrong in this council, let's get someone in. Let's get someone in from outside through the LGA or elsewhere, and let's see what we should be doing. Let's see what other people are doing to get the best out of the Isle of Wight Council for the residents out there and the businesses, because that's what they deserve. And there's only one way to do it, and that is to get an external pair of eyes or three coming in and going through everything that we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and the outcomes. As I say, I've been on both sides of scrutiny, both as leader, executive member, being scrutinised, and I've been on the other side being chair of the Overview and Scrutiny for Health on the Isle of Wight, vice chair for Overview and Scrutiny of Health for Portsmouth, Southampton, Hampshire, and the Isle of Wight. So I've been about a bit, and I think that we make a pig's ear out of it, to be quite honest. And really, we should be a damn sight better. And if you like, looking at ways to improve it, and the ways to improve it without doubt and without picking off each other, is to actually say, if we're satisfied with what we're doing, it doesn't hurt to get someone in from outside. A peer review on scrutiny would go down extremely well with everyone, and it would also make the residents of this island, and once again the businesses of this island, know that we are doing our best to get the best we can for the Isle of Wight pound. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, you indicate you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brodie, for your kind comments regarding that particular scrutiny committee. Yeah, I just feel it's important that members are engaged, whether they feel that scrutiny is broken or not working as well as it should, I think it's important that we take opportunities to look at policy and papers and question, even when the leader of the council continuously, as in my case, says I'm not allowed to ask questions, which is very, very irritating and seems to be pointed at me. However, I have to agree with other councillors that we've worked perfectly well all these years. Getting the right people on the committees is absolutely essential. Having the skills and also having the time to do it, because audits are in the morning and that's not always great for people that do work. So I think what residents expect is they expect the right people with the right skills, as Councillor Andre said, to be representing them and asking the right questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. Thank you very much. Councillor Axford, you next to speak, please.
Yes, we seem to have come away from talking about the committees to talking about scrutiny, but my point is really on the audit committee. My understanding is that you can't be on the audit committee if you're in the cabinet or if you're on one of the scrutiny committees, and that means there's hardly anybody left. And as a separate query, as I'm one of the few people that's eligible to be on it, in the latest suggestions, I see that I'm down as a reserve for 3 scrutiny committees. So I'm not quite sure how you stand if you're a reserve for a scrutiny committee, but they're allowed to do it. And I'm quite happy to pass this through today as a holding operation. But I think that we do need to look in detail about the qualifications for serving on the audit committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Axford. Councillor Love, I'll bring you in next, but I just want to point out Councillor Stewart raised a point of order. If I can bring in Councillor Love, and then when you speak as the seconder on the paper, you can bring it up then, please, Councillor Stewart. Thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Councillor Love.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm just listening to the debate and how we seem to be tying ourselves in complete knots with a system which really isn't fit for purpose for today. We're still dealing with a system that was invented for the 1900s, and really we should be looking at a complete review. The whole point of the committees is to enable people with the right skills and to allow people to participate. And it seems that what we're talking about here is actually restricting that participation rather than enabling the best amount of engagement in these committees, not just by us as members, but by the general public. And so, of course, we're caught between the rules of what is allowed and not allowed, but we certainly should be looking to try and change the system and improve the system as much as we can. So it's clear to me that from the debates that we've had that we're still not there, and so we should be cautious for what we vote for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Barry, we've been waiting a long time for you. You are ready to come back.
Thank you very much. The first reason for asking was I looked at the original paper, which there was a Conservative missing from the audit committee, which there seems to have been for ever since the audit committee was formed. But now you've got Councillor Charles Chapman, who is now a Conservative, I believe. So he is now in your group, which is a wonderful thing. It's a bit rich. Councillor Brodie's commiserating with me for being on the audit committee when it was him that put me forward for the audit committee. People talk about skills for the audit committee. I think that's a mistake. Although it's good if you have got a percentage of people that have got a financial background. That's a wonderful thing. But people shouldn't be afraid of being on them sort of committees like the pensions and the audit, because there's wonderful opportunities for people to learn and train in things which they never had before they became a councillor. So I think people shouldn't be shy of it. There shouldn't be vacancies. People should be queuing up to be on things like the audit committee.
Yep.
I've been on nearly every committee the council has, planning for years and all the rest of it. Over the resource, I was resources for 7 years, when resources included half of the cabinet jobs what you got now. That was all under resources. And I did that for 7 years. It's when I started, I didn't know nothing about resources, but there was all the training. I was actually a member of SIPFA. I was a member of SIPFA. And for a while, they had a scheme where they took councillors who were on cabinet positions and chairmen and trained them. And I went to all the training. I went to Warwick University and all the rest, all through the council and being a councillor. So it's a good thing. Or am I taking too long? Have I used you not read? Anyway,
that's good.
All I say to people is don't be frightened of these things you don't understand. What I have done successfully for 20 years is steered away from scrutiny. I've never ever been on a scrutiny committee, and yet I've always been on more committees than anywhere else, and I've worked as hard as, or not harder than anyone else. You don't have to be on a scrutiny. Okay, I won't say no more.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barry. I'm going to bring in Councillor Lilley, and then I'm going to bring in Councillor Stewart as seconder, and then we go to the vote on this. Thank you. Councillor Lilley.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate on the back of the Councillor Axford. In the past, it's actually been quite difficult, I think, with the to have the membership on the audit committee, and we have benefited in the past when actually Councillor Tyndall was on the corporate scrutiny committee, as well as actually being the chair of audit, because actually there is a benefit of a conversation between those two committees within that. And I know that he was actually often certain things do come under audit as opposed to scrutiny, and I just feel that we've created a rod for our own back, and don't have we'll have certain more vacancies on this formula than we've had before. So my point.
Thank you, Councillor. And Lily. Right, Councillor Stewart, and then after you, Councillor Tyndall will be ready to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I still stand by my initial comments that this is a challenging change, and I know that members have worked hard. I'm not aware of any formal committee meeting when I've stopped Councillor Jones-Evans asking a question at it. If she says I have and can say that, then I certainly would apologise, because everybody knows that's not my style. But I probably say too much to people. I recall this is the same Councillor Jones-Evans, I think, who I invited onto our interim cabinet when the independent administration walked out, and she joined me and others in a cross-party initiative to actually make sure we got to where we needed to get. So I am really disappointed at that. If it's to do with a floating bridge, it may be. That's why she made the remark. I don't know. Again, my door is open if she wants to have information, and I always act in, as you know, in best faith. And the reason this is important is because I don't actually agree with members that say I won't sit on this committee and that committee. It's very hard to fill all these committees, and I'm very mindful, members of ward members, that as this exercise has shown, if you can't have on audit people on scrutiny, and you can't have cabinets, even with a very strong team, it's hard for me to fill the audit positions. I actually agree with Councillor Barry. I think it sometimes is good that you don't consider yourself an expert in audit, because you usually ask questions other people wouldn't. So I'm grateful to all members who serve on all committees, and I'm grateful to you, Chair, for allowing me that little bit of airtime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Thank you very much. We go to Councillor Tyndall to sum up, and then we go to the vote. Thank you, Councillor Tyndall.
I think to sum up, the report's there is for everyone to look at it. 2 comments, one for Reg. I enjoyed my time on audit. It really is a good and interesting time if you put your heart and soul into it. So he's got my support there. The other one is, can I just ask that the various members and independent various political groups don't change too much, otherwise this will be a regular event at every council meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. on that, we're going to go to the vote now on this paper, which has been presented, proposed and seconded. And again, as I call your name, Councillor Axford.
For.
Councillor Bertie.
For.
Councillor Beston.
For.
Councillor Brading.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Offline. Councillor Churchman.
For.
Councillor Hastings.
For.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Hobart.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Hutchinson.
For.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
For.
Councillor Mosdale.
For.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Adlaw.
For.
Councillor Peace.
For.
Councillor Price.
For.
Councillor Quirk.
For.
Councillor Tyndall.
For.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Whittle.
For.
Councillor Andre.
Against.
Councillor Downer.
Against.
Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
Councillor Lilley.
Against.
Councillor Medland.
Against.
Councillor PC Wilcox.
Against.
Councillor Jones Evans.
Against.
Councillor Love.
Against.
Councillor Brodie.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
Against.
Councillor Murwell.
For.
Councillor Perks.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite get my mic off on time. Obviously, I'm for.
So, Councillor Perks.
For.
I'm for. Councillor Stewart just says he's for. And Councillor Smart.
Okay.
Against. Thank you. Can I go back to Councillor Chapman if he's online? He's not on the call. We can't get hold of Councillor Chapman, so that's everybody called. Okay, the results are those for is 25, against 13, and there's no abstentions. So that motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Tyndall, for presenting it. If I can call for a short 10-minute break for now, and we can refresh ourselves, and we'll see you in 10 minutes' time. It's 7 o'clock, say just before 10 past 7. Thank you very much. Yep. No. Right. Okay, councillors, are we all here? We got a nice cup of tea. Can we make a start, please? How do we stand with numbers? Are we all online? Okay, brilliant. Thank you, councillors. I hope you enjoy your break. We're going to item number 8 on the agenda. And the first, there's one motion which has been proposed by Councillor Lilley. And if I could ask Councillor Lilley, you've got 5 minutes to put your motion forward, please.
Thank you, Chair.
You're muted again, Councillor. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I'll understand. The word involvement is my message tonight, not to councillors, but to you as human beings and island citizens. It will soon be a year since we had our first lockdown, and we are now in our third one. All our words have changed. Worlds have changed. The Isle of Wight has gone from the lowest infection rate to the highest in weeks. But what has been consistent through all this time of loss and pain throughout the year and now has been the involvement of Isle of Wight communities at grassroots level, supporting their neighbours and the most vulnerable. We have positively celebrate our community spirit, which is a flame of hope. As the vaccination process kicks in and we start to emerge as a community out of this vacuum of lockdown, we will rebuild. We need to learn from our mutual experience and build a legacy that improves island citizens' life from those aged 100 plus to the babies that are being born today on the island. We do this by involving as many island voices as possible. We need a platform to start. My motion tonight is to acknowledge the direct action of island citizens residents in coming forward from March 2020 to volunteer and support their vulnerable neighbours at a time of crisis. Within days of the first lockdown, there were COVID community response hubs across the island, and there are now 26 specific community hubs which are a network of collaboration with Isle-wide voluntary organisations and meet through Zoom regular with Isle of Wight Council. Some are established community groups such as Pan Together in Newport and West Wight Community and Support Centres. Others are collaborations of town and parish councils and voluntary sectors such as Rye Town Council and Aspire and Ride, or entirely new groups established by community activists in Brightstone and Bembridge. Community Action Isle of Wight has worked tirelessly to link all the groups and work with local councillors and residents in other areas to fill the gaps, such as in Cowes. Many parish and town councils have actively engaged with their residents to take sure the most vulnerable have been supported, such as Sandown and Ventnor. Community Action Isle of Wight established a community resilience project that now has coordinators that work with grassroots groups across the island. Isle of Wight Council officers have worked closely with this network. It is important to note public health in developing future community mental well-being across the island have recognised that they do not have to reinvent the wheel of community engagement when this now established network provides an important platform to build on. My motion highlights this amazing community spirit and puts forward the vision of hope post-COVID and the idea that Isle of Wight Council can develop the dialogue with Isle of Wight residents, citizens, not only about the day-to-day support needed during COVID, but after it. It is a basis to establish a citizens or community assembly. This idea needs consultation from the onset, and there will need for transparent, open and honest dialogue in establishing a structure that is totally independent of politics and about effective community engagement and involvement. A citizens' assembly is a representative group of citizens who are selected at random from the population to learn about to deliberate upon and make recommendations in relation to particular issues or set of issues. There are effective examples such as the citizens' assemblies in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and Oxford has a citizen assembly for climate change. Community or citizens' assemblies provide councils and the public sector a direct dialogue with the community and its residents. It is a proven methodology of community engagement, particularly effective after crisis scenarios such as Grenfell Tower fire. The Grenfell Community Assembly is a forum that gives the Grenfell community the opportunity to come together and discuss the issues that matter to them. It offers a chance for residents to take part in real conversations and honest exchanges of views for everyone involved in the process. Meetings focus on different themes each time, depending on what residents want to discuss.
Councillor
Topics.
Lilley, could I stop you there quickly?
Can I just finish off? Can I finish up, please? Topics have been young people, funding for community initiatives, environmental health and well-being. Please, can you recognise this and support this motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilley. I've had a good thought about your motion when I first saw it, and I'm concerned about the possibility of the financial implications it may have on the council. And I was in two minds whether to accept it or not. But in this case, I will allow it, and I'll ask you for your seconder, please.
It's Councillor Ian Stevens, Ride West.
Would you like to speak now or later, Councillor?
No, I'll speak now because obviously we're pushing into the evening, but I want to make sure that the value of the commitment from island people with volunteers, etc., is heard across the council chamber. There are going to be people that speak against this. I note your concerns with regard to finance. Finance can be as little or as much as we need to take forward, but you can't put a value on the voice of the people, the knowledge of the people on local issues. This is a grassroots up situation within Grenfell, and which Councillor Lilley alluded to and mentioned. I would like to say that the Grenfell Inquiry heard from within Dame Judith Hackett's report, etc., the voice of those people within the Grenfell Tower block and the community surrounding it. It proved invaluable with her recommendations. It proved invaluable with the building safety situation that's coming forward through the House of Commons at the moment, and assisted in making suggestions and ways forward for that bill to progress. So that's off island, but on island we're talking about the voice of the people. We in the Isle of Wight Council, both in the membership and in the officers community, have got to realise that we haven't got all the answers. We haven't got all the answers at the executive, within the executive of the NHS and indeed Public Health England, etc. So we've got to look to where there is local knowledge, and a great deal of talent is within our community. We'd be foolish not to recognise that, not to recognise the assistance that we can actually grasp from such a community liaison group, if you like.
Thank you.
Councillor Hastings mentioned about reaching out across the Solent. And who to? To probably another council. We need to make sure that we reach out in our community to look at our features, our coastal erosion, our coastal management, and indeed the assistance that this type of
Councillor, could you finish your sentence? Otherwise, you're going to get muted. Thank you. I'm sorry it led to that. We are short of time. Next to speak is Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to speak against this motion. I'm sorry not to be able to agree with the proposer or with Councillor Stevens, but I have serious concerns about what is being suggested. Can I firstly say that some of the wording of the motion I think leaves a lot to be desired, in particular the first paragraph. And certainly I would do a hell of a lot more than recognise the commitment of residents Isle of Wight. I would probably applaud them, if not more, even more than that, the Chair. I would also protest at the fact that once again our colleagues at RIDE forget the fact that there is one community council on the Isle of Wight, and that's in the county town. And once again he omits the phrase community, town and parish councils. But what I'm more concerned about is this 100 citizens assembly. What is this? How is it going to be selected? Is it going to be selected at random? And if it's random, how is it going to be representative, as is prescribed in the motion, of the wide diversity of the island? Random selection will not allow for diverse representation on a fair basis. However, if it's not going to be random, then it's going to be effectively a self-selecting group of people. The great and the good, as I often refer to, the people who stick their hands up and say, I'll do that, I'll do that. And it won't really represent the people of the Isle of Wight. Now, I'm a Democrat through and through. I believe that very much that the people need to speak, but we live in a democratic place, in a society. Democracy is not perfect that we exercise, but this council is a democracy. It's a voice of the people who choose to vote every 4 years at Isle of Wight council elections. I think that I speak for the people of my ward, not everybody, but for the vast majority of them. And I would hope that every councillor feels that they have that mandate. Certainly, when it comes down to the rest of the motion, it talks about the town and parish councils. I think Councillor Stewart alluded to earlier, though I hadn't counted them myself. There are over 200 local councillors on the Isle of Wight. They're part of the democracy of the Isle of Wight. So what Councillor Lilley is suggesting is setting up yet another organisation, a self-selecting bunch of the great and the good, 100 citizens assembly, to discuss. It doesn't even want to make decisions, just wants to discuss. It will be a talking shop. Frankly, this council gets accused of being a talking shop too much, but sometimes it can get on and make decisions, even though I don't always agree with them. In conclusion, I will say, yes, it's been great what's happened in terms of the community on the Isle of Wight during COVID. I'm a trustee of Pan Together, and I think we've done fantastic things, but we haven't been overly involved in the hub meetings. We've kept ourselves a bit away from that because we didn't share the same concerns that the people at those hubs had. And I know that the Clarkton Newport Community Council has felt the same way, so we haven't been as involved in those things. So in conclusion, Chair, I will be opposing this motion. I don't like to. I suspect that I might have people I don't normally vote with on this one, looking at the list of people who wish to speak. But so be it. I hope the motion falls, and let's stand by the democracy we already have in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Could I bring in Councillor Mosdale next, please? Yeah.
Thank you. I think I need to be aware that Councillor Brodie was going to put an amendment into this motion, but it was felt that it would change the essence of the motion. If he had allowed me to bring that amendment, I would have actually voted for Councillor Brodie. I do have great concerns over this, but then I have concerns over some of the ways that things have been run. I have protested for a couple of years now that the chair of the Voluntary Sector Forum is a politician. I don't think that should be. And it does make me worry how many people put their head above the parapet. It's all very well saying this Citizens 100, but actually when you look at the membership of the Voluntary Sector Forum, and I regularly read the minutes, there's not that huge regular attendance at that meeting. We mentioned, Councillor Lilley mentioned the public health. I have to remind you that we've been very, very careful with the governance of the Health and Wellbeing Board. Actually, there's a meeting next week. On that is the police, you know, there is us politicians, but there's also the Voluntary Sector Forum, which does mean that a politician is there. A bit of confusion there, but you know what I mean. And there is also just so much of a wide selection of society is at the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it's also a place where we can check and challenge. You know, we have had Maggie Oldham, the chief exec, that we've been able to question. We have scrutiny panels that our health scrutiny, we have the CCG turn up, we have the NHS turn up. I think this, you know, I completely agree with Councillor Brodie, and actually we're all elected to represent our residents. That's what we're here for, and we also had the voices of town and parish council as well. So yeah, Councillor Brodie, I would have voted for you if you'd been allowed to give your amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mosdale. That's great. Councillor Stewart, you're next to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the I think. So, Chair, as I indicated earlier, I wanted to speak on this, what I consider to be an unnecessary motion. In these times of crisis, when we have so many island residents already involved in the fight against coronavirus and in discussion and development of plans for the recovery and rebuilding of the island, the formation of another body to discuss the recovery and rebuilding of the island seems to me to be unnecessary and an unjustified call on the already hard-pressed community. I too would have supported Councillor Brodie's amendment had it been accepted. This is a role and responsibility of the Isle of Wight Council, supported by our community partners and underpinned by the very significant funding support we have and continue to receive from government. For the reasons I have stated earlier, we have already established a diverse, inclusive and very representative body of people through a range of forums who are taking action to support the island. The Local Outbreak Management Board, the Health and Wellbeing Board, the Economic Development Board, the Head of Organisation Forum chaired by the MP, the Town and Parish Council Forum, the Community Hub Forum, the Business Community Forum, the Business Advisory Group, the Federation of Small Businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, and I think the latest one I saw, and I'm very applauding of it, is the Looking Out from Lockdown, which I think Councillor Lilley is involved with as well, and has some very eminent people looking to do a really good job. And not forgetting the elected members of the Isle of Wight Council who are meeting here today, and all the internal committees that they attend that we've just discussed, as outlined in that Appointments Committee paper. Now is the time for action, not more words. Now, I have to say, I'm not sure if Councillor Lilley is just politically pontificating, personally promoting himself, or power grabbing. Whatever it is, he needs to stop, think what message he's sending out to the community, and show some humility at this time. I am now even concerned that he will himself become overloaded in the coming months and find himself unable or unfit to put himself forward for re-election, which I'm sure is not what he wants. To my knowledge, he's the Mayor of Ryde Town Council, buying a town hall, building Ryde Harbour, appointing more staff, challenging major planning applications, promoting mental health and well-being, planning his re-election, one assumes, for the campaign, and hopefully fulfilling all his current duties as a member of the Isle of Wight Council. The good news is that provided he stays safe and secures re-selection, he will be able to rejoin the existing Island Community Assembly, which is known as the Isle of Wight Council. Now, I've been minded to ask for this motion to be referred without discussion to Cabinet, as you rightly pointed out, Chair. But having spoken with members across the chamber, I think it's the right approach now to vote this motion down and not put more unnecessary burden on our already hard-working council staff and our wilder community residents. In the interest of the future of the island and in the recognition of all the amazing work I have outlined at the start of my earlier report, I intend to vote against this motion, and I would encourage other members to do the same if Councillor Lilley, which he clearly hasn't, decided to withdraw the motion. I think we should vote against it. It's not the right way to go, and it's not going to help when we're trying to rally our community.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. That's just on time as well. Councillor Hastings, you're next to speak. Thank you.
Just waiting for the live to come on.
Thank you.
Shall I start? I can't see it there. Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't agree more, frankly, with everything the leader has just said. This motion, Councillor Lilley is calling for a non-political citizens' assembly, and yet when he assembles and chairs a voluntary forum, he is a politician. So somehow that doesn't follow. And I think just asking for another citizens' assembly, because in my opinion we already have plenty, with a community council that I am part of in Newport, and town and parish councils, community hubs, volunteers, charities, community action, you name it. There are hundreds of citizens that assemble. Town and parish councils and community council, unpaid. They come along and do their duty and join in and try to help. And I just think it's incredibly demeaning to think that they can't cope, so Councillor Lilley has to set up yet another layer. Why? If he wants to set up another layer and call it a citizens' assembly, please do. Do get those people together, gather them, bring them to us, let us all talk. We're all happy to talk. Cabinet, go on the road to make sure that we hear the voices of local people. Anybody can come along and attend those meetings. We have iWalk, we have all sorts of bodies. And I have to say it's quite demeaning also to think that we're not putting a plan together, because we are, and we have. Councillor Hutchinson and myself sat on a response and recovery board, where we have the three responses: impacts, response and recovery action, which has an action plan. A lot of work went into that. The officers that put the day and night, I know they were working hard on that, and it was incredible what they put together. I would suggest Councillor Lilley gets onto Chris Ashman, ask Chris Ashman to send him all the copies of the work that's been done. Sit down and read it, and then think, do we need a citizens' assembly as well? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hastings. Councillor Fuller, you're next to speak.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think one of the things that the Isle of Wight Council has been criticised for a long time, and I'm not blaming the current administration for this, because the last administration got exactly the same. But one thing that we get criticised for is the fact that our communication isn't great. I know there are all these bodies that are around, but I think one of the things that we as councillors do is that we're great hearing what people say, but we don't listen. I think a good example that we can give is the debate that we had earlier on about the council tax support for those on lower incomes. The engagement that we had quite clearly told us that we're not giving enough support for working families. And what we do? We disregard that. If we are going to engage with our local communities, I really do feel that engagement should be effective. I'm no expert on it, but one of the things that I've tried to do, certainly since lockdown, is to, from my perspective, I've had to cancel surgeries. That for me was a really good opportunity to go and talk to people about matters that concern them. And one of the things that I've found quite effective is that I now hold themed surgeries where people can talk to me about certain issues, for example, things like the budget, and I can properly engage with those residents. Sometimes I'll get things right, sometimes I get things wrong, but unless you can meaningfully engage and sometimes accept that you're wrong, then it's another example of us hearing rather than listening. For that reason, I'm totally in support of Councillor Lilley's proposal, because I think this opens up the groundswell of community engagement that is sometimes lacking. I know we should be doing it as councillors, we should be doing it as town and parish councillors, but we don't always, and that is the perception of the residents that many of our residents that we represent. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Hollis, you next, and you got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. From what I've heard so far, I'm just absolutely amazed. I listened to Councillor Lilley talk about sort of people selected at random, and I was rather feeling to myself that, look at your own side, perhaps you've been selected at random. I don't know. And then I listened to Councillor Stevens. I've never heard anyone sit just at a council meeting, just insult so many people, insult the councillors of the council who all work hard. All the town and parish councillors, they've just been insulted. All the people who help the council, all the officers of the council. It seems to be a complete lack of respect of our existing democracy. And then, of course, all the other volunteers, as has been said. I'm really surprised we're actually, at this time, actually looking at this sort of rubbish, actually. I think it's rubbish. And Councillor Fuller, you say we don't listen. Well, speak for yourself. But I have to agree, and I've gone on record, I agree with Councillor Brodie. And we are all elected councillors. We represent the people who elect us, and that is, we have a perfectly good discipline system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Perks, you're next, and you've got 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm quite enjoying it tonight. I think this is the most I've ever spoken. Listening to Councillor Brodie and Councillor Mosdale, it's lovely for me as an independent, albeit I've just joined the Vectis party, but I'm still on my own. It's lovely to hear that we are all on the same boat. We're all thinking along the same lines, and I'm sure their constituents, similar to mine in Ventnor, are proud of the way that the general public of the town of Ventnor in particular, the way that all the local organisations have just rallied round and are delivering food parcels, they're delivering meals, they're sorting out people's cleaning, they're doing all sorts of things for the community. You don't need another 100 people telling us all what we're doing wrong. And when I first read through it, it just sprung to mind of Quangos and keyboard warriors, and another crowd of people sitting there telling us as the councillors who are voted in by the residents to do a job. And I think pretty well along the way we all learn from each other, and along with and I have to say, some of the wonderful people that work at County Hall, they're so helpful. If I get stuck for something, there's always somebody I can call on to guide me in the right direction. And I think we don't need anybody else except the councillors and the council officers and the public telling us what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Barry, you're next, and you have got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. When this cabinet system all started off, I don't know whether people remember, a lot of people weren't even born, I suppose, when it started off, but there was a thing called area committees. We were going to have area committees that were going to sort of transcend things down to the parish council for the parish. That never came. They tried it, it didn't work. And sadly, I don't think this would work. I can understand why Councillor Lilley brought this forward, because this council is the unexclusive council I've ever been on. I've been on a few. This council, unless you're in the majority group or the top of the majority group, i.e. the cabinet, nobody knows what's going on and nobody shares anything with it. If I want to know anything, I'm going to go on the White or read the county press. For example, They now decided that COVID patients are going to be helicoptered off the island to the mainland to be treated. A thing that, as councillors, we should all know about. Why should I have to wait and read that in the county press? All sorts of things go on, but unless you're in the clique, you don't know about them. That's why people like Councillor Lilley are working hard to try and get round that. Even when Pugh was the leader of the council, every time he met government, and I was quite surprised tonight to hear we may not get this island deal. The leader said whether we get it or we don't. That's after dozens of meetings, I suppose, with government ministers, with the Member of Parliament, Boris Johnson, all the rest of them. We still don't know we're going to get it. We're all hanging on it, but we don't know we're going to get it. Why haven't they said to the opposition members, this is the story, this is what it is, this is the position. We got to wait till he drops the hint in his report. That's why I can understand. I won't support Councillor Lilley with this because I agree with Councillor Brodie. It's one more tier of administration we can do without, and it's all political. Anyone who decides to speak for his community is acting politically.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor Garrett, can I ask you to come in next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Lilley set out some of the background, and it's got good academic research background to how citizens' assemblies can work extremely effectively. It's certainly the case that you can achieve diversity through random selection. There are good statistical ways in which you can achieve that. What it helps achieve is make sure that those who are hardest to reach or least likely to be heard are heard, and then heard in a structured way, and a way in which you gather that wisdom as well. That is nothing to do with insulting anybody else. I understand that as a community councillor here for Newport and Carisbrooke and Isle of Wight councillors, that somehow I should feel insulted by Councillors Lilley to actually want to reach out to more people across the Isle of Wight and engage them in the recovery process. So I'll certainly be supporting him on this, and I certainly note that a draft of A Better Island Isle of Wight COVID-19 recovery plan, which can be found on the Isle of Wight Council website, discusses a citizens recovery plan panel, and indeed discusses gaining a representative panel together to provide insight into well-being indicators. So the idea that somehow a citizens assembly is anathema to this council just astounds me, really. Sadly, I have to say that a couple of members along the way seem to have focused their discussion of this amendment rather more on the personality of Councillor Lilley than on the idea. Not all members have done that, but one or two have done so, and that is to be deprecated. Had it been brought forward perhaps by another member, maybe there would have been different support, and we can't help the fact that there are personalities on this council and they may clash, but we should try and set those aside. But certainly, Chair, I shall be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Brading, you next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Lilley for his sermon. I think this is an absolutely silly idea. Without repeating what other people have said, we do have 40 elected county councillors, town and parish councillors, and I think there's nearly 300 town and parish councillors. Fantastic 26 support hubs with hundreds of volunteers, as well as the voluntary sector, but I do agree shouldn't be chaired by a politician. I wasn't going to speak, then as Councillor Lilley spoke, I did find his comments quite demeaning, insulting, and really detracting from all the fantastic work that's going on across this island by so many people. We should be really proud of them, not recognise them. As Councillor Brodie said, we're really proud of the people on the Isle of Wight that are really delivering at this difficult time. We've got so many boards and bits to feed information in through, and I do agree with Councillor Brodie. His comments around, you know, what a ward councillor is, the engagement with the wards, and I totally agree with him. I like to feel that my ward engage with me and vice versa. But I am a good listener, Councillor Lilley said in his sermon, don't have to invent the wheel. So why is he trying to reinvent the wheel then? You know, and the two questions: 100 people, where are they going to meet? Can you have 100 people meeting at the moment during COVID? And will it be 100 people meeting anytime in the near future? This will be, as eloquently said earlier, a talking shop, and I would absolutely strongly be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brading. Thank you very much. We have Councillor Love next, please. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I won't speak for 3 minutes. I mean, I'm pretty amazed by what I've actually heard here tonight. I mean, you know, democracy is an important part of what we're all about, and being inclusive of the people of our island at every different level is what we should be striving to achieve. So, as a professional community development worker, which is what I am, you know, spent my lifetime trying to encourage the community to communicate with one another, to express their opinions, whether if they have any impact or not on our council is irrelevant. It's about bringing people together to communicate, to have their voice listened to and recognised. And so I see that as a wonderful strength. I do feel actually that there has been a personal attack on Councillor Lilley this evening for bringing this motion. His motion was well intended, well meaning, and yet we have people taking it personally when it shouldn't be taken personally whatsoever. This was an attempt by Councillor Lilley to engage the community in discussion. What is wrong with that? Other than some people feeling defensive of their own political positions, which is what it sounds like to me. The more people that talk, the better. Why should we be offended? Why should we be offended? That's absolutely ludicrous.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Andre, I'll bring in Councillor Andre, and then I think we need to get to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait to go live. Thank you. Well, obviously, a lot of things have been said in respect of Councillor Lilley's motion on both sides of this. There seems to be some confusion about what is being suggested here. I will refer back to my comments regarding the allocation of committee seats. It's about the right people with the right skills being in the right place. And one thing that a citizens' assembly would do, we have brilliant people on the island, experts that don't have time, and let's be honest, to be a councillor is a big commitment and takes a lot of time, and not everybody has that time that they can give to that. But they would have time to actually, and they would engage with a citizens' assembly that would give us access to experts in a huge variety of fields, information that we don't actually currently have. And I would also refer back to my colleague Councillor Fuller's comments that one of the main criticisms that we have is our public consultation, and that's something that I constantly have as a member, that we don't consult with our public enough, and this is the ideal opportunity to actually engage in a meaningful way. And I think I fully support this motion, and I think it's extremely valuable, and it will be extremely valuable to this island to have access to expert knowledge that we wouldn't be able to access in any other way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. I think we've debated this enough. If I could ask, if you could turn your camera off, please, Councillor Love, as well. Thank you. Just so we can get a quality over the system. I can ask Councillor Lilley to sum up his motion, and then we take it to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, fellow councillors. Part of me putting forward motions when I have done is to actually have dialogue and debate. So I do actually take the comments, and I would have liked to actually have seen Councillor Brodie's amendment. I didn't. I might have accepted it. I think that I also accept his comment about the community council of Carisbrooke, of Newport and Carisbrooke. So I accept that. I've acted in good faith, and my motion was meant to be well intended, and I think it's important that when I was presenting, I was very much actually saying there needed to be consultation. The reason why I feel we need it, and I take the point of all the others, is there's lots of members of the community, in our wonderful diverse community, that actually would want to contribute in a non-political way on those. And I think the Grenfell Fire Assembly enabled a lot of residents to talk about particular themes, and there was an important dialogue. And I think it's important what Councillor Garrett said, which is actually there is a citizens' assembly that's actually written into the recovery, the Isle of Wight Council's recovery plan. So, and in fact, it was that link with that document that I particularly came forward with that motion. But I'm happy, at the end of the day, it's democracy, and if people will vote for it or vote against it, a lot of my motions over the last few years haven't always got forward, but at least there's been a debate, which hopefully some of the public that tune in have been able to see. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lilley. On that note, we'll take it to the vote. If you can turn your cameras off and have your microphones ready on standby, I call your name. Councillor Axford, are you for or against this motion?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Is that me?
Yes.
I'm against.
Against. Thank you. Councillor Bertie.
Against.
Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Brading.
Against.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Councillor Hastings. Councillor Hastings.
Sorry, Chair. Mike would release against.
You against the motion? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Hobart.
Against.
Councillor Hollis.
Against.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Against.
Councillor Kilpatrick.
Against.
Councillor Mosdale.
Against.
Councillor Nicholson.
Abstain.
Councillor Outlaw indicated against. He's left the meeting. Can't take up. Councillor P.
Against.
Councillor Price.
Against.
Councillor Quirk.
Against.
Councillor Tyndall.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Whittle.
Against.
Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Downer.
Abstain.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Howe. Councillor Howe. We'll come back to him.
No, I'm here. Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Lilley.
For.
Councillor Medland.
For.
Councillor PC Wilcox.
For.
Councillor Julie Jones Evans.
For.
Councillor Love.
For.
Councillor Brodie.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Garrett.
For.
Councillor Mirwell.
Against.
Councillor Perks.
Against.
I'm against. Councillor Smart.
Against.
Against. Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll add them up. Nobody to go back to. No. For the motion is 10, against 24, and there's 3 abstentions. So the motion falls from Councillor Lilley. Thank you. If we go on to item number 9 on your agenda, there's members' questions to the leader. We have got 30 minutes. So it's from 5 to now. So we got a half an hour for questions. We've got no written questions that has been received. So any other questions? Councillor Stewart. Any member indicate on the chat bar, please. Councillor Pease, you'd like to ask a question to the leader?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Leader, can I ask what the whether you agree with me or not that the works that we've completed at St Mary's Junction have been a complete success, and I'd like to also know whether you've got any views as to what the next steps are.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a very interesting question because I remember a lot of residents expressed concerns when we were taking a roundabout away and putting in a junction, and it was expensive, part of our wider programme which will link in with Campo and beyond. But I have to say, and I don't often get lots, this is one of those examples of where I've received some tremendous feedback for Councillor Ward, being the cabinet member, and for the actual benefits itself. When people go through it, they quite happily agree that it's safer, which was our objective, and now they understand it. In fairness, it works very well. You asked me where we're going, and I have to express the fact that we're looking now to the next step, which is St George's Way at Newport, the stretch between Coppins Bridge and Marks and Spencer's roundabout, which is what we said we would do. And coming back interestingly to the consultation, which is important, I'm grateful that officers have gone ahead and spoken to the 2 ward councillors, Councillor Brodie and Councillor Matt Price in particular, to explain what's happening. Councillor Jones Evans, on behalf of Newport Community Council, I thought was very supportive at that time. I think she still is. But what we have agreed, and I stand corrected, and the importance of the communication, to do a presentation to Newport Community Council, because there's a process, and I actually value highly particularly the big councils that we're working with at the moment, and Newport is the county town, to be able to share with those councillors, and I know a number of them are on this call today, what is intended, and to seek their thoughts. They're the local council. If you came out to my ward at Chale, Knighton or Whitwell, I would like to think you would come and talk to me if something was being planned, and often they do. And I'm sure it's the same for every councillor. So I'm very grateful that we've got this opportunity. Obviously, now is quite a good time because, for reasons not in our own control, it's quiet. We have the resources able to move from the St Mary's Junction across to the next stage. And I think it's a real opportunity to do what we said we would, which is to make some major impacts on the infrastructure for Newport. So I thank you for your question. I thank the local ward councillors for their contribution, and I thank Newport Community Council not only for their indications, but actually the opportunity to share with them, because we've got this big project with the town, and this has got to be part of it, and it is an opportunity to do some things as well. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Pease, do you have a supplementary, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stevens, you're next for the question, please.
Thank you. I want to come back to initial statement with regard to beach safety and enhanced beach safety, I believe it was, Leader.
Yeah.
And I wondered, are you going to put more money into the local town and parish councils that have the undertaking duties which include lifeguards on beaches, etc., and cleansing of the beaches? That's the one thing. And also, can I just touch on coastal management and soil erosion, etc.? What plans have we got afoot with regard to that in the near future, currently and medium term? We won't go into long term. Thank you.
No, okay. Well, let's talk about beach safety first of all. As you know, the beaches impact on the island as a whole, but the town and parish councils who have particular interest are often the ones that are closest. So you've got Ryde, you've got the Bay, which incorporates Sandown Lake and Shanklin, and then we go around to Colwell, we've got then Yarmouth. So this is about the fact that when this COVID pandemic has been managed, and it will be, our next opportunity is to reopen the Isle of Wight so that people come here and enjoy it. And if I was looking to come to the Isle of Wight, I want to be sure it's safe. I want to know my kids can swim safely. If I'm ruthless, I don't want to be hammered by a jet ski. And if you own one, I don't think you do, but I'm sure if you did, you would not want to cause harm. And it's a good investment. Now, I can tell you that Councillor Hastings and others have already been engaging with town and parish councils and some other voluntary groups who have already offered to help fund some of this initiative. And I don't want to always call on big ones like Newport and Cowes. They fund a great deal already. But other people are very interested in this. So we're now developing the strategy, as I said. We will certainly be looking at the costs around, and you'll see from the budget where we go with this, costs around reinstating buoys, for example. And then you've got to look at the maintenance. And then we've got to think of how we police it in the loose sense of the word. So there's a great deal to this, and you will understand this more than any other councillor. Perhaps it was impressing upon me when I went to the local government association meeting just how much work colleagues across the water are doing. Because just to give you one example, the jet ski problem that we had doesn't come from Sandown or Ryde necessarily. Sometimes it comes over from the Hamble or Southampton. And I think, you know, if we genuinely mean we're going to make our beaches a fantastic place to go to, this is a really, really big project. So I hope you'll bear with that. I don't have the detail on all of the coastal, but I will happily get officers to write to you on that.
If you could. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Leader. Councillor Julia Jones-Evans, your next question, please.
Is Councillor Brodie's on screen? Is he next?
Can't hear him at the moment. He's on mute.
Sorry, Councillor Jones-Evans is next to speak.
Should I ask the question? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Brodie, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. But I'll just ask my question quickly. Thank you, Leader. Last week we had a very informative session with the planners regarding the permitted development rights, which are currently under consultation with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Very, very worrying, these proposals, because it would leave the local planning authority and local councils and local plans and placemaking complete without any recourse to plan their town and village centres. It's very, very worrying, and I think we're all on board. The members that were there were all on board with putting our objections forward to this. Within that as well, you know, the same ministry, of course, are giving money out for our two houses in Ryde and Newport, which is all about, you know, planning, you know, fantastic town centres and building on our historic buildings and our settings. And of course, conservation areas will be taken out of this new proposed planning. My question is, the second part of the consultation is for permitted development for schools, colleges, prisons and hospitals. They can increase their footprint by 25%. Now, I'm just wondering what you think of that, because I'm, you know, and pardon for Councillor Garrett, but, you know, thinking we've got the prison, we've got the hospital, we've got the college, all in one area, and I'm really concerned that if this permitted development were to go ahead, we could end up with serious problems on the island.
I'll send you a written response to that, because I would like to consider it carefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. You've got a point of order.
Yes, I have, Chair, because I'm a little puzzled as to what's happening here. I'm looking at the agenda for tonight's meeting, agenda item 9, member question time of the leader. The question must be submitted in writing or by email to Democratic Services no later than 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 14th of January. Now, that is what's on our official agenda, and I am told in the chat bar by the Chief Executive that this was changed in the last constitution, and it's in something called the running order, which isn't the formal agenda of this meeting. Can you clarify for me as to whether we now are allowed to make questions on this final agenda item without putting them in advance. Because I know we're such sticklers for the new constitution these days, it would be quite good if we could have clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Right, Councillor Brodie, and I will bring in our monitoring officer, Chris Potter, to explain. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Brodie, for raising the issue. So I'd like to clarify the point for all members. The revised constitution does state at rule 8 that oral questions can be asked under member questions, but if members obviously wanted a written response given at the meeting, then a written question would have to be submitted. And just by way of further clarity, with remote meetings, questions by members of the public, which is not relevant to your point, but I just want to explain the difference between the two. Whilst we have remote meetings at the present time, there is a requirement under, I think, Rule 20, that members of the public would have to submit written questions, but members can ask oral questions, and that restriction does not apply to members. So members can effectively ask under the agenda item. Members of question time can be put orally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Does that clarify, Councillor Brodie?
Well, no, it's as clear as mud, but then it is with everything in our constitution now after the wild experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The idea of written question is so you're guaranteed to have an answer because there would have been notice given to.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Next to speak is Councillor Price. Councillor Barry, sorry. Can I ring Councillor Barry first?
Just unmute.
Okay, unmute.
Right. Can you tell me regarding St Mary's Roundabout, how long a period must pass before a major road development like that is deemed a success or not?
Leader.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to answer honestly to Councillor Barry because he asked straight questions. I mean, I suppose it's a success in the eyes of the beholden, isn't it? You know, if you use it on a daily basis, I have a number of people who talk to me, and I'm sure not necessarily yourself, but others do. I get that feedback, so to some degree it's a success. But then there will be other people that say it's not, but then they don't even use it. So my impression, based on the feedback from the community in the wider sense, and Councillor Ward getting compliments, which I love him to death, but he doesn't always get them, is actually that this was a successful piece of work done on time, within budget, and in fact has enabled us to move forward on the next stage. And I remember Newport Community Council highlighting that they were as interested in what we could do around Coppins Bridge as they were there. So it is subjective, Councillor Barry. My impression is it's been a success. There's probably other things that haven't been so successful.
I'm sorry, but if I can just come back quickly.
Of course you can.
I'd just like to say I don't love Councillor Ward to death,
no.
But if you're spending millions of pounds, surely somebody who's agreed to spend these millions of pounds should be able to turn around to somebody, i.e. a member of the public, and say, yes, here's the facts and figures, this is why it's a success compared to last time. We haven't had the agriculture show, for example. So when you sit there and glibly say it's all a wonderful thing, it probably is, and I hope it is. Don't think I'm saying that I'm want to see it fail. I don't. But I think it's a bit early in the day, taking it as the COVID business and the time of year. There ain't the people running through there now that would to sit there and say, oh, it's a wonderful thing. And Councillor Ward is the best thing since sliced bread because he came up with it and forced it through against all this opposition. I think it's a little bit early to say. And I think that's a line that we should be saying as a councillor. It's working. People who go to B&Q seem to think, oh, it's a wonderful thing. But There are other things to take into consideration, and I think we should.
No, I think I'll come back on that. You're absolutely right, Councillor Barry. There's many measures we can do, and having you as chair of audit would be one aspect. But we'll see over time how it goes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. I've got Councillor Lilley listed to speak next. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, my question is, I'll just put it into context that obviously in Ryde and in other parts of the Isle of Wight, large planning applications have been submitted during COVID, which has actually put a huge pressure on residents, right? Having to get their views in a very difficult time forward. My question is to do with the new algorithm, right? And I know that we've probably been in agreement the need for housing, but also need for housing at the right level with that. In Ryde, we are very, very close. Well, we are, I would argue, have got overdevelopment, right, or possibly, and probably not the right development in a lot of ways. When are we going to be able to have the algorithm so we actually know the number of houses that could actually clarify, particularly the concerns in Ryde about overdevelopment?
Okay, is that your question?
Yes.
Well, Councillor Lee, thank you. And whatever else has been said this evening, I would never have it said that you don't show your genuine heart and interest in things like this, and I want to acknowledge that. I'm not going to speak about Ryde applications, and in particular any one Ryde application, because I know some of these are in the planning process, and it is a pseudo-judicial process, and everybody knows that it has to be measured on material planning conditions and nothing else. So I won't talk about that in the detail. I think in the algorithm, I think you're talking about the government initiative to start with to move to a white paper that actually boosted up Isle of Wight housing numbers to something over 1,000. And I could probably have stepped across the queue and stood next to you if I saw that, because I really don't think that's the right kind of level of development for the Isle of Wight. And you know, our MP probably made himself somewhat unpopular with the government because he took a very clear stand on this. I also agree with you. We want the right houses for the right people in the right place. And some of the initiatives that we're already seeing being delivered, so the Branston Farm site, for example, the little development came out of Cowbourne that had over 3,000 people applying for 20 odd houses. All indicates if we get it right, then our island community will get the housing they need. And I would like to see every islander have their own home, either rented or there. I think we owe it to our community. But you're also right. We don't want to burst all over the Isle of Wight with houses. We've got the most fantastic areas of outstanding natural beauty. And I'm very sympathetic, although not totally full on understanding, on the MP's desire to manage that. So I think my answer would be it's work in progress. I know the MP's been speaking to all sorts of people, and I'm in touch with the planning officer, and I would very happily talk to you outside of a formal meeting to get your views, because I think communication at all levels is really important.
Thank you, Leader. There's nobody else with questions for the Leader. So on that note, I would say there's no more business to discuss tonight. And I will close the meeting at 13 minutes past 8.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillors. Thank you very much for your patience and your questions. Your interest.